So our final speaker in this session is Dr. Steve Pawson from Scion. He's a forest entomologist and he's going to talk to us about finding that great massive pests that come into forestry.
Excellent. Not just forestry. Thanks, Travis. So this is, I should first acknowledge some of my co-authors. Some are in the audience, but this is a research program that's been done between Scion and Lincoln University. So what's our crazy ambitious idea? So our crazy ambitious idea is to work with primary sector industries, with Maori organisations and central and local and regional government to put together a new technology suite for doing general surveillance. So we want to turbocharge surveillance for New Zealand. So this is a National Science Challenge funded project. We just started in January. It fits in Maureen's theme 2, about reducing risks and threats across the landscape. So when we talk about general surveillance, what is it? So MPI has 12 sort of specific or targeted surveillance programs. Some of them you've probably heard about, things like the fruit fly surveillance, the gypsy moth surveillance, that kind of stuff, high-risk site surveillance. Well, general surveillance is everything else. It's absolutely everything else. It's you over there, Steve Wakeland, it's you, Bill, tapping on your computer, it's everyone in this audience, and it's everyone out there in New Zealand. It is Team 4.7 million. It's all the informal notifications that come through to MPI, it's all the researchers that give them a ring, it's everything. So that's what general surveillance is. And why are we interested in general surveillance? So this is a sort of a stylized diagram of the invasion curve. Many people have put this up before. So as time goes by, the area that gets infested goes up. Okay. Now, MPI have their targeted surveillance programs, and they do find things during their targeted surveillance programs. And this is sort of a gut feel that some people have put down as to where perhaps on these invasion curve that some of these things have been found. This is not backed up by data. This is just the gut feel of some people. And so these targeted surveillance programs by MPI tend to be very specific. They're focused on individual organisms, individual pathways, specific risks. And so they tend to often find things when they're very, very small infestation areas, like we may only find, for example, one particular individual and you never find any more. So that's probably fairly low down the invasion curve. But there's also all sorts of other things that are found, things that are not found by these targeted surveillance programs, things that are submitted by the public, by growers, and perhaps some of these are a bit further up that invasion curve, so they're in a much larger area, therefore much more expensive and much more difficult to eradicate. So what we're aiming to do is we're aiming to improve the quality of general surveillance. So we want to drive these reports back down this invasion curve. So all this other general surveillance that is helping MPI can find things earlier. So by giving the right mobile tools and technologies, by giving education to the people that are doing this so that they know what they need to be looking for, we hope to be able to find things earlier so we've got a better chance of eradicating them. So what's the current state? Okay, let's say you've found something suspicious. Who are you going to call? Come on. Who are you going to call? What's the number? Can anyone remember the number? Who's not in MPI? Well done. But you might call Ghostbusters. You never know. This is not so far from the truth. There was a great paper that came out a month or so ago where these people have developed an optical system for tracking flies through the air. They can distinguish between two different species and then they knock them out with a laser straight out of the sky. So you may call Ghostbusters in the future, but no, you will call 0800 80 99 66. That's what we currently do. Okay, so if you see something suspicious, you see blue spots in your avocado, call that number and talk to the nice people from MPI. But in the future, we want to have some additional options to help augment MPI. So we're not saying we're going to replace MPI's 0800 number. That's always going to be there. You always want to talk to that person. But we want to try and develop some additional tools to work alongside this to make it a bit easier in some circumstances. So that's an example down there below of a particular mobile phone tool that you could use to just quickly submit a photo of something that you think might be a risk organism. Now, this is not hard to do. We put one of these together to help with the eucalyptus leaf beetle response in the Hawke's Bay in a matter of a month. Very simple thing. I think I've seen perhaps, you might think, oh, I've seen that thing. Tap on it, take an image, submit it, and away it goes. So very simple and easy to use. The technology's not hard. We just need to adapt it to what we're doing. So the hardware's out there and the software capabilities are out there. we in New Zealand just haven't really adopted those heavily for biosecurity surveillance. These kind of technologies are getting picked up very, very well in the sort of the predator-free area in terms of tracking data around trap checking and that kind of stuff, but in terms of just general surveillance, they haven't been widely used. So we've been looking elsewhere around the world to see what other people have been doing, and we've found over 60 instances of things that people have been doing overseas. And a lot of them sort of follow these same sorts of patterns here. You get an option to perhaps choose the type of organism you're interested in various different ways, and then you might open one of them, it'll give you a list of the things we're interested in this particular area. And if you think you've seen something, you might then log a report of that, take an image and you submit it, and you might be a little bit more metadata around that. But that tends to be the general format of these specific tools. It's about the user putting in an observation, and that's kind of where their role changes. And I guess where we're going to be a little bit different in this is that we're looking at options around where the users can also help identify or triage observations in addition to just submitting them. Okay, so people will be submitting things, but also other people will be helping identify them so we don't overload MPI with responsibilities for dealing with thousands and thousands of calls coming in every day. So we can't do everything, so we've been in this first phase of it, so we've been a little bit narrow in our focus. So what's very important is that we're going to be compatible with MPI's existing systems and some of their planned future systems that we know are on the horizon. We're sticking fairly closely to plant pests and also diseases of plants that are easy to identify. We're not going to go for diseases of plants that you need molecular techniques to deal with. And we will be dealing with public groups only in a targeted way as opposed to going full steam at all 4.7 million people. And we will also be focusing on particular case studies with the primary sector. And as I said, we'll be looking at opportunities for the public to contribute to the triaging process and also institutional data, but I'll come to that a little bit later. So this has got strong linkages with Biosecurity 2025, which was covered yesterday. We're looking at engaging with that team of 4.7. We're looking at building new technology platforms, so new tools for tomorrow. We're looking about data exchange, which I'll come to in a minute. And we know we need effective leadership and governance. So by the end of our 2-year program, one of our milestones is to put in place a governance structure to take this forward. And it's all about also educating and building capacity in people, so that builds tomorrow's skills. So, key aspects of the program is we need to develop some mobile data capture system, which we're doing in a co-design process with our participants, and I'll talk about that more in the future. And we also need a network for information exchange. This is not the network that we will have, but this is just sort of conceptually what it will roughly entail. We're kind of going to be this question mark in the middle, and there's going to be other participants, of which Kiwifruit Vine Health is one, and Tim at the back's another, Bill's here, so we've got a few people who are part of this. And people who are using this are going to submit observations into our system. Nature Watch may help identify some of those records and send positive finds off to MPI. Some things may go straight through to MPI. And all the kind of information that comes back into the participant system so we can report back to people. So there's individual level reporting. So say you submit your observation, you want to know a little bit about that kind of thing. You want to know, hey, thanks very much for sending that in to me, and that was X, or what have you. You know, you might be interested in that. But on the sector level, people have been frustrated that they cannot quantify the contribution that their sector is making to surveillance. So being able to report back on how many observations are coming in, how accurate those were, is very useful for the sectors. So I alluded to it, but we have a very, very strong social component to this. And if we think of stakeholder engagement at various different levels, where we move from, where we move from the bottom of the pyramid, where we're dealing with a lot more stakeholders, but we're putting a lot less effort into individual stakeholders, to where we have few stakeholders with a lot more effort. We're currently concentrating in this area up here, so we have a core group of partners that we're wanting to work with as part of our co-design space, so that we make the technology so it's fit for purpose for what these people want it to do. And then as we move into our case studies, we'll move down the pyramid. We will be pushing out communications to use the technology we've developed. We also have a very strong Matauranga Maori component. So Melanie Mark Shadbolt, who's somewhere in the room possibly, she was here earlier. She's from Te Tirawhaka Mātaki, the Maori Biosecurity Network. So they're embedded in the team and working with us with our design. We also have a specific area where we want to develop some key metrics around what principles of kaitiakitanga which apply to biosecurity surveillance. So I'm very interested to see Kevin's talk after this. Almost there. And so we'll be working to determine what kind of aspects of kaitiakitanga are relevant, and then we can build a reporting mechanism to provide metrics around that. We're also working specifically with Wakatūan Corporation, who have this e-whenua platform to manage all of their work on their lands, and we're wanting to try and embed some of the technology directly into that e-whenua platform if we can, and also in the general technology platform, we'll be incorporating a te reo configuration to that. So utilising institutional data, a lot of agencies around New Zealand collected a lot of data that's relevant for focusing people's attention for general surveillance. Particularly MPI has a lot of data. So say, for example, someone's using the kind of apps that we have to report potential threats, we can send alerts to them. We know their phone is potentially in Northland at this point in time, so we can send them alerts saying keep an eye out for myrtle rust specifically. Or we can have temporal alerts that will only come out at certain times of the year. For example, we know brown marmorated stink bug is likely to arrive more at certain times of the year, which correspond to the overwintering phases in other countries. So we can send targeted alerts out at certain times. So using institutional data is another side part of the project which is going to kick off very shortly, and we'll be advertising for a postdoc. So if anyone knows of a young, keen, enthusiastic being that likes to crunch lots of data, come and have a chat with me later. So where are we up to? So currently we're in this co-design phase, as I indicated earlier, and we had our first workshop just recently in April, and that will come to an end at the end of June, where we hope to have the conceptual design completely finished. And then we have 3 months to work up the technical design for that, and then initiate some software building, and we'll hope to have our mobile tool ready early in the new year, when we'll start with some of our case studies. As I said, we're working with a number of participants very closely, and this is the groups that we're working with. So right across the various primary sectors, from pastoral to forestry, kiwifruit, apiculture. We have our key government agencies on board, DOC and MPI, a number of the councils are involved, and the avocado and hort industries as well. So we've got broad sector support for this. So if you're from an industry that's on there and you want to know a bit more about it, because I'm engaging with other people from your sector, come and see me. If you're from another organisation that would like to be involved, also come and see me. I'm wearing a bright shirt, so it should be easy to find during the poster session, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Do we have a couple of quick questions for Steve?
Back there.
Up the back there? In the dark?
Yeah, it is very dark. I can't see.
Hi, just a quick question. This is a great idea. Have you thought about incorporating the Google Images system in this? Because, if you take images and send to MPI, as you said, it's going to bombard MPI with data. But Google is already doing this for us by kind of identifying any image that we search on Google Images, and they can incorporate this into an imaging software with algorithm development for your top wanted list. Not everything, but the top wanted list. I think if you add them to your team, it can be done much quicker.
Yeah,
and it can be done in the field real time.
Yeah, so there are a number of groups around the world looking at sort of artificial intelligence approaches for image recognition and that kind of stuff, including some in New Zealand. There's one who reports to do it already overseas for fungal pathogens in crops, but apparently it's pretty flaky as to whether it'll give you a reasonable level of ID. But we're very much aware of that technology, and we're planning on seeing where there's a smart idea project around that in New Zealand, run through Landcare and I think Vivara at the University of Canterbury, and we're looking at engaging with them in a little later on when they're a little bit more advanced to see if we can input that technology into the kind of app that we're dealing with, yeah. So we are aware of that.
Okay, we better stop there. Thank you, Steve.